For 3 consecutive nights, the skies over Iran have been silent. The nightly U.S. bombing runs that defined the last 2 weeks have stopped. Officially, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations frames this as a deliberate choice. The administration says they are creating a window for diplomacy and allowing ongoing talks the space to move forward. Publicly, the message from the UN is that American forces remain fully supplied, maintaining that troops have every munition required to continue the fight. However, the suddenness of this ceasefire has raised questions about the stability of that narrative and whether the pause is a product of diplomatic success or a symptom of a deeper problem. Last Friday, the president's top advisors met at the White House to discuss the potential for escalating the conflict. During that session, Vice President J.D. Vance and General Dan Kane delivered what they called hard truths about the current state of the war. 5 months of active combat has placed a massive burden on U.S. logistics, bringing the realities of the supply chain to the forefront of the strategic discussion. Following that briefing, the administration opted for a tactical pause. While the public sees a diplomatic opening, the internal shift suggests a mandatory reset of American military operations. The center of this logistical pressure is the Patriot missile system. These key air defense interceptors are being used at a frequency that is quickly draining the available stockpile. This chart clarifies the scale of the depletion. In Ukraine, interceptors have been used in the hundreds, but in the 5-month conflict with Iran, the U.S. has already fired 1,430 missiles. This rate of consumption exceeds the current output of the defense industrial base. Because of the long lead times required to fund, manufacture, and deploy a single replacement, the military is facing a gap in its readiness that cannot be closed quickly. General Kane warned that if the U.S. continues at this pace, it will lack the munitions needed for a future conflict against a peer adversary like Russia or China. The raw data of inventory and manufacturing has become the primary factor overriding the administration's immediate foreign policy goals. Beyond the equipment shortages, the human cost of escalation is rising. Internal assessments suggest that striking Iranian civilian targets like power plants and bridges would result in high levels of civilian casualties in dense urban areas like Tehran. There is also the threat of a direct response. An expanded U.S. bombing campaign would likely trigger Iranian retaliation against vulnerable energy infrastructure throughout the Gulf. Escalation has become a zero-sum game, promising regional economic disruption without offering a clear path to military victory. Iran is also leveraging its asymmetric strengths. By activating Houthi militants in Yemen and Iraqi militant groups, they are applying pressure across the region while avoiding a direct conventional confrontation. The core of the deadlock is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran maintains that this narrow choke point is its sovereign territory, giving it control over one of the world's most vital shipping lanes. To resolve this without further combat, Oman is managing back-channel negotiations aimed at restoring the freedom of navigation through the strait. By utilizing this proxy network and geographic leverage, Iran has found a way to counter direct American military superiority. Trust remains the biggest hurdle. Neither the U.S. nor its Gulf allies are convinced of Iran's commitment to a long-term diplomatic resolution. There is also a hard deadline. The Memorandum of Understanding established a 60-day window for negotiations, which is set to expire on August 17th. This isn't a permanent peace. It is a race to find a diplomatic solution before the August 17th timer runs out and the logistical pause is replaced by renewed military action. That diplomatic race is about to get more complicated. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is arriving in Washington, bringing a hawkish perspective that challenges the Pentagon's current push for restraint. At the same time, the White House is exploring other diplomatic avenues, recently meeting with General Joseph Aoun to discuss a potential Israeli withdrawal and the restoration of peace in Lebanon. Despite the political pressure and the desires of allies, the math of military readiness has set a clear limit. When the stockpiles reach these levels, the U.S. is forced to look past the bombing runs and rely on the strength of its diplomats.